It was a Tuesday, I think. Days kind of blur when you're stuck in the city grind. The constant hum of traffic, the endless sea of faces, all blending into one monotonous routine. I was heading home from work, exhausted as usual. My job wasn't glamorous, just office stuff. But it paid the bills. The fluorescent lights, the endless spreadsheets, the same old coffee machine that never quite worked right. I remember the sky was this weird shade of gray, like the city itself was tired. The clouds hung low, heavy with the promise of rain that never seemed to come. I stopped by this dingy little bodega, grabbed a cheap microwave dinner, and trudged up the stairs to my apartment. The cashier barely looked up, lost in his own world of monotony. My building was old, one of those with creaky floors and questionable plumbing. But hey, cheap rent in the city, right? The walls were thin, and you could hear your neighbor's every move. I shoved the key in the lock, the metal cold against my hand. The lock clicked. I pushed open the door. And that's when things started to feel off. The air felt different, heavier somehow. There was this chill in the air, even though it was summer. Not just a normal chill, but a deep, bone-chilling cold. It felt like the temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. I figured it was just the old building. I shrugged it off, my stomach growling louder than any fear. Hunger has a way of making you ignore the strange and focus on the immediate. I tossed my bag on the worn-out couch and headed to the kitchen. The dim lighting cast long shadows, making the room feel even more eerie. That's when I saw it. A small dark stain on the hardwood floor, right in the middle of the room. It looked like dried blood. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. My heart skipped a beat. I stood there, frozen, staring at the stain. What could have caused it? How long had it been there? Questions flooded my mind, but no answers came. I cautiously approached the stain, my footsteps echoing in the silent room. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. It was as if the stain was a portal to something dark, something I wasn't ready to face. I reached out to touch it, my hand trembling. The stain was dry, but the sense of dread it brought was palpable. I pulled my hand back, my mind racing with possibilities. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing in, the air growing thicker. I needed to get out, to clear my head. I rushed out of the apartment, the door slamming shut behind me. The hallway felt like a refuge, a place where the strange and eerie couldn't reach me. But I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. Something was wrong, and I had to find out what. Okay, maybe I should back up a bit. This whole situation started a few weeks ago. See, I hadn't planned on moving into this apartment. My old place, a tiny studio, had gotten flooded thanks to the charming habit of my upstairs neighbor leaving his bathtub running. Water was everywhere, soaking into my furniture, my books, my life. I had to pack up everything I owned in a hurry, trying to salvage what I could. So there I was, desperate for a place to stay. This apartment, it just sort of fell into my lap. A friend of a friend knew someone moving out, and there was no time to waste. I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I needed a roof over my head, and fast. I saw it, thought it was creepy, but hey, desperate times. The landlord, this shifty guy with eyes that never seemed to focus, assured me the place was clean, safe. He had this unsettling gaze, like he was hiding something. But I ignored my gut feeling. I was too tired to care. Now, staring at that stain, I wasn't so sure. I grabbed some paper towels, bent down, heart pounding in my ears. The stain was dark, almost black, and it seemed to have a life of its own. It was dry, flaky. I told myself it was probably paint, or maybe some spilled juice the previous tenant forgot to clean. Yeah, that's all it was. But the more I scrubbed, the more it seemed to resist, like it didn't want to be erased. Dinner was bland, tasteless. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I sat there, chewing mechanically, my mind racing with thoughts of what that stain could be. Usually I loved the peace and quiet, but tonight it felt heavy, oppressive. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains seemed amplified, like the apartment itself was alive, watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next few days were strange. I kept finding things out of place. A book left open on the coffee table when I swore I'd closed it. The TV remote, which I always left on the armrest, was suddenly on the floor. Small things, easily dismissed. But it was starting to get to me. Then there were the noises. Little creaks and groans, which, again, old building, right? But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear what sounded like footsteps right outside my door. Slow, deliberate footsteps. One night, I even worked up the courage to look through the peephole. Nothing. The nightmares started a week later. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the feeling of someone watching me lingering even after I was awake. And then, the whispers began. At first it was faint, just on the edge of hearing. Mumbles, indistinct voices, like a radio tuned between stations. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was the stress, the city noises filtering in. But the whispers grew louder, clearer. One night, I woke up to a voice, clear as day, right next to my ear. It said, "Get out." I shot up in bed, heart racing. The room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamps outside, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. I stared into the darkness, listening for any sound. Silence. I told myself it was just a dream, a particularly vivid one, but deep down, a cold dread settled in my gut. The whispers continued, growing more insistent. They seemed to come from the walls, the floor, everywhere and nowhere at once. One evening, as I was making coffee, I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a movement in the hallway, a flicker of darkness that vanished as quickly as it appeared. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The shadows seemed to be alive, twisting and writhing in my peripheral vision. I decided to talk to Mrs. Henderson, the old lady who lived across the hall. She'd been in the building for ages. Surely she knew something. When I knocked on her door, it creaked open as if inviting me in. The apartment was dark, dusty, filled with the scent of mothballs and decay. Mrs. Henderson sat in a rocking chair, a shawl draped over her frail shoulders. Her eyes, though clouded with age, seemed to pierce through me. "You've seen it too, haven't you?" she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Seen what?" I asked, my voice trembling. She pointed a gnarled finger towards the back of the apartment, towards a room I hadn't dared to enter. "The glimmer," she whispered. "It shows itself to those who are soon to—" Her voice trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. That night, the whispers were deafening. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see what was in that room. I grabbed my phone, the only source of light I could muster, and slowly made my way down the hallway. The doorknob was ice cold to the touch. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The room was empty, bare except for a single mirror propped against the far wall. Moonlight streamed in from the window, reflecting off the dusty surface. And then I saw it. A glimmer, a faint outline of a figure standing behind me in the reflection. It was tall, skeletal, with long, sharp claws. I whirled around, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was empty. The phone slipped from my grasp, crashing onto the floor, plunging the room into darkness. I scrambled back, tripping over my own feet, my hand frantically searching for the light switch. Click. The light flickered on, revealing the empty room. But I knew it was here. Whatever it was toying with me. I raced out of the room, back down the hallway, desperate to escape the apartment. But the front door that I had left unlocked, was now bolted shut. I rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me. I was trapped. The whispers were all around me now, mocking, menacing. The temperature plummeted, a bone-chilling cold seeping into my bones. And then, I saw it again. The glimmer. This time, it was closer, clearer, emerging from the shadows in the corner of the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. I could make out its form now. A grotesque parody of a human, its eyes glowing with an eerie, malevolent light. The air around it seemed to crackle with a sinister energy. I screamed, a primal scream of terror, and in that moment of pure fear, I knew I couldn't give in. I had to fight. My survival instincts kicked in, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a heavy book, and hurled it towards the figure. It vanished. The sudden disappearance left me momentarily stunned. but I couldn't afford to hesitate. The book clattered to the floor, echoing in the oppressive silence. I didn't waste any time. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, and I knew I had to act quickly. I threw my weight against the door again and again, desperation lending me strength I didn't know I possessed. Each impact sent a jolt of pain through my shoulder, but I couldn't stop. Finally, with a deafening crack, the lock gave way. Relief washed over me, but I knew I wasn't safe yet. I stumbled out into the hallway, slamming the door shut behind me. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to gather my bearings, knowing I had to keep moving. I didn't look back, not even once. I didn't stop running until I was miles away, the city lights a blur around me, fading into the distance. I never went back to that apartment. I left everything behind, every single thing. The landlord, the shifty guy, never questioned it. He probably already knew what had happened. It's been years, but I can still feel the chill, hear the whispers echoing in my mind, and sometimes in the dead of night, when the shadows grow long and the silence is deafening, it all comes back. I see a glimmer in the dark, a reminder of the horror that awaits in the shadows, lurking and waiting.